Hello guys, and welcome back to this new episode. Today we are going to talk about the glass delusion, one of the most fascinating delusions ever. The glass delusion. It is the idea, the understanding, the perception that your own body is made of glass. Let's stop right here. Okay, so first of all, disclaimer, this is not a delusion that is present or common nowadays. The last case was in the 80s, I believe, and it was the very last case that we have trace of when it comes to this delusion. It was, however, very well known and very well spread in the 15th and 16th century, mostly. Now, there's a reason. The 15th century, so we're talking about 1400, it is an era where glass started to be made. Colorless glass by Venetians was something alchemical, magical, mystical. How Venetians were able to make glass, that shocked everyone. And not only that, mirrors started to be introduced in houses. Of course, first the nobles and then the poor people. Incidentally, this is a mental illness, a delusion that only a certain category of people suffered from, specifically nobles, very nobles, and also people devout to intellectual pursuits. They were perceived, and they perceived themselves to be very sensitive, very well educated, but also suffering from the perception of having their own body made of glass. Now, this was certainly for them a nightmare, and we do have records of people that ended up even committing suicide, because living with a body where your own perception is that is going to be smashed at all times, it must be a nightmare. And the fact that it was is testified by, for instance, one of the main exponents, one of the main characters, the most known people who suffered from glass delusion, who was the King of France, Charles VI. And the way he would go around, for instance, was with this sort of armor that had very small and thin iron bars sewn inside. He also refused to bathe and to change clothing. So that is quite something. Also, every time you would sit, for instance, you would have troubles, right? Because of course the armor, and he would go with pillows strapped around his butt just to make sure he would not bump and his body would not break and smash under the impact of his body with a certain object. Now, that was, as I was saying, a very well known, very well spread among nobles delusion. Now, it's very hard to say exactly what caused it, except again what we have already mentioned about the glass and the introduction of glass in the form of mirrors and objects of glass in that period of time. But the perception of having your body so brittle, so made of glass, persisted also well beyond the introduction of glass in the houses, and it might be ascribed to different elements. It is also a fact, as written by Ian Hawking, that allowed a form of social escape, meaning people suffering from this disease, though I don't think, and nobody thinks they were doing this consciously, were able to evade and escape certain social norms. That also made them more distinguished from the rest of society. And being that there was a king in the midst, and being that the disease impacted nobles, it was almost a sign of your nobility to have that sort of delusion. Though again, with that being said, we are not implying that they did this on purpose, that it was a conscious attempt to make themselves more distinguished or anything like that. There was also another case, a very important one, that affected the Princess Alexandra Amélie, and she believed that she had swallowed a grand piano entirely made of glass. So even that was quite something. Now, of course, for the disease to actually be considered as such, for the delusion to actually be considered as a form of paranoia, which it was, because it included many symptoms that were more paranoid-like. For instance, the King Charles VI admitted not to recognize his wife several times. For it, I was saying, to be spread and to be accepted and to be diagnosed by doctors, of course you had doctors willing to do that. And the reason was that this pathology could be fitted within the framework of humor's theory. The theory of humors was very old. It began basically with Galen, so we're talking about ancient times, and it was the idea that an excess of a certain substance in your body would cause a certain type of problem. In this case, this delusion was believed to be caused by an excess of black bile coming from kidneys and spleen. Nowadays, we don't have this type of classification, and we don't necessarily understand the concept of black bile or theory of humors, and we proceed with a different concept, that is amount of certain chemical substances or hormones and a disbalance of those in your brain and in your body that can cause you to suffer from X, Y, and Z. But even though we don't have that, it's so fascinating how certain delusions or mental illnesses were only transient. And so it is fascinating because it also shows that sometimes certain periods of time could cause a certain type of maladjustment that was periodically known with a certain term. With that being said, though, guys, I'd like to hear your thoughts. So please don't forget to comment below, let us know your thoughts, and of course if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk next time in a new video. Bye!